if you want to know, in a sense, what you're going to be most known for, or what people are going to notice about you in regards to your activity in the world, this often relates to a sense of status and prestige, although not always, because sometimes what you can be known for are scandals and difficulties in that regard. The Navamsha and the Dasamsha give you a lot of insights into that, with a specific focus on the Dasamsha. And why is that? Because the Dasamsha represent those great things, those things that we are known for, those things that we can do well, in a sense. The sun is very important in the Navamsha, in the Dasamsha. The sun is very important. The sun and Saturn are very important both in the Dasamsha because they're both planets of greatness. And Saturn is actually the son of the sun. So it's the shadow of one's greatness. Saturn's considered to be the planet of greatness. The better a person's Saturn in the Dasamsha, generally speaking, the greater capacity a person will have to be great. Why? Not because you won the lottery and you bought all kinds of billboards and ads to say, hey, I'm here, this is me. Not because you lucked into it because of your parents, not because of some quirk or some freaky little talent that you have, but because Saturn is the planet that allows you to do the tedious hard work to be great. All the great authors, they don't just write a book one sitting and then that's it. For example, Stephen King, I believe it was Stephen King, he would say you don't write a book, you edit a book. Sometimes it takes 20 to 30 revisions until you actually get a book to where you want it to be. It takes that tedious hard work of Saturn to give that capacity for greatness. Or if we think about musicians, for example, the Beatles, they tried over and over and over to get recognized for what they were doing. And the amount of work that went into their success and their greatness, no one else ever tries to do that, because they try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, it doesn't work and they quit. Saturn doesn't quit. Saturn keeps going. Certain basketball players, you think they're great, you know who they are, because they score the most points. Well, if you do your research, oftentimes what you find is they scored the most points, but they also took 10 to 100 times more shots than everybody else. So yes, they scored more points, but if you look at the ratio between how many shots they tried to take versus how many they actually made, it's amazing. The difference is huge. So Saturn gives greatness because a person doesn't stop until they succeed. One of the reasons why in the Kriya Yoga meditation courses that I teach at kriyayogaonline.com, when people ask me how long it's going to take, my first response is, if you're going to ask me how long it's going to take, don't even bother. Because you're setting yourself up for, you want it on a timeline. And if you really want to accomplish something, it doesn't matter how long it's going to take. You're going to stick with it until you're done. So Saturn gives that greatness. The sun is important in the Dasamsha because in order to be great at something, you have to show up, be consistent, do something every day, have a sense of duty towards it, an inspiration towards it. There's the things that people are often considered great at, they would often do whether they were getting paid for it, whether they were getting recognized for it or not. So the interesting thing about the Dasamsha is we often look at it as a chart that deals with something like fame, which that plays a role. But when we look at the sun and particularly Saturn, it shows that real greatness, real fame comes from consistency, doing your duty and following your inspiration, which is the sun. The better the sun in the Dasamsha, the better a person's sense of status and fame will come from their inner inspiration, their inner duty, which they would do anyway. So looking at the Dasamsha, we always need to realize that, number one, you have to read the birth chart by itself first. So please go ahead and look at the previous videos I've posted on these topics of the Vargas, because I discussed this. But if you find a planet that's doing very well in the D10, the Dasamsha, the planet is in a good house, the planet is in a good sign, and from the birth chart has good aspects from other planets, then you figure out what that planet is and what it represents in the birth chart. What house does it rule over in the birth chart? What is it doing in the birth chart? What bhava yogas is it involved with in the birth chart? Which of these Raj yogas is involved in the birth chart? whatever that represents in the birth chart from that planet in the Dasamsha, those are going to be the things that a person is either known for, or a person has a lot of inspiration towards and a lot of success in. Sometimes you get planets that are very prominent in the D10, the Dasamsha, but they're very negative planets in the birth chart. Well, that's just part of the process. You're going to see that negativity within the birth chart is going to be something very much tied to what they're known for, what they're seen for, how people appreciate them and recognize them. So the D10, just like all the Vargas, simply refines what is within the birth chart itself. You can't look at the D10 by itself. You have to look at it in relationship to other Vargas. You have to look at it in relationship to the D1. And again, as I've been saying over and over again, because more people have been asking me about these Vargas, and the resources are there. Again, in the Art and Science of Vedic Astrology, Volume 1, Volume 2, the downloadable courses on AshevilleVedicAstrology.com, the Navamsha Dasamsha course, the Unlocking the Vargas course, and then hopefully in a year or so, this book I have in mind. Also previous videos on this channel which deal with the Vargas. The resources are there. You just have to study it and contemplate it for yourself. And with practice, you'll start to see how these things make sense, how they come together.